You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you'll receive tips and techniques to advance yourself. I'm your host, Dom Brightmon, and every week we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. Now let's get on with the show. And today on the Going North podcast, we have, you guessed it, another author, but not just any author. We got a serial entrepreneur in his house today. Oh, this wonderful gentleman right here is an Amazon best-selling author, and he's also a fellow Toastmaster, as well as a boatload of other things. You're probably wondering who I have on this podcast today. Well, I'm honored to have the one, the only, Tony Whatley. How are you today, sir?
Good, Dom. Thank you for having me on the show. I can't wait to introduce myself and speak to your listening audience.
Oh, yes, it's going to be fun indeed, baby. Fellow Toastmaster, Dad served in the Marines during the Vietnam War. That is freaking awesome.
Yeah, Dad, and I'm proud of my dad and my mom. They're both blue-collar roots. We didn't grow up with much, but they did teach me a strong mindset and taught me to dream and chase my dreams.
That's right, baby. Even if you're barefoot, chase them dreams, baby.
There you go. I like that.
So I'm pretty sure I missed a lot of holes in the introduction, so mind filling in those potholes so the street can be nice and smooth.
Yeah, so I'm a native Houstonian. I'm down here in Houston, Texas. I wasn't born here. I was born in a Marine base in Japan, and we moved here as soon as we could, and I just grew up here probably since age 3. I've always had I've led a dual career. That's the best way to describe it. So I've always worked in the oil and gas industry since I was 18. Started out in the field doing, manual labor construction out there in the hot Texas sun, and determined I didn't want to spend my entire life out there doing that. I had a lot more potential to chase after. So I put myself through college, and I got an engineering degree, and it took me about 7 years. It was a really long, arduous process because I was working full-time and going to school at night. And then I started some companies. When I got out of that, when I first got my first engineering job, a 40-hour job just seemed like a part-time job to me because I've been, busting ass for so long that I had all this extra time. I was like, I could go out to the bars and do stupid things, or I can figure out how to earn more money. And I was very hungry, so I started out some companies. At first, it wasn't always company. It was always side hustle things where you're flipping things, buying things cheaper and selling them, or teaching yourself some new skills that you can earn extra money from. I was detailing cars. I was installing car stereo systems. I was mowing yards. I was doing anything I could just to earn a little bit more on the side, and whenever I had extra time. And eventually I started to start businesses instead.
That is awesome indeed. So basically engineering all the way to being a millionaire with multiple companies.
Yeah, exactly. All just basically ideas that I've pursued, and anyone that knows me, I'm just a very determined person, and I guess I actually use the motivation when people doubt that I can do something or they say I can't do it. I usually use that as a little bit of a fuel to put in my tank to go after things and prove them wrong.
That is beautiful indeed. It's probably one of the best feelings in the world when someone says, hey, you can't do that thing. All right, watch me. Then you put on the watch and then you actually do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I checked out some of your awesome stuff in your pages, and you got all sorts of cars, especially the Dodge Viper, and your work has actually been featured in magazines, too.
Yeah. About 10, 15 years ago, I was actually doing quite a bit of articles for automotive magazines, the big ones out there, Hot Rod, Carcraft, Super Chevy. It's all these big mainstream car ads, and that was actually a side hustle, me doing those articles and photos. I taught myself photography, took a lot of notes, asked a lot of questions from guys that were doing it really, really well and that were getting published. And I got good enough to where I was getting my photos recognized. And I also love to write, obviously. I just love to write stuff. And I do miniature blogs on my Instagram every single day. So it was another skill I learned, another thing I could teach myself. And I used to write all these articles for all these magazines. And they would pay me between $1,000 to $1,500 per article. So you can imagine that's a pretty good little side hustle.
Oh, yeah, it is. $1,000 per article? Oh, my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is freaking awesome. So how did you discover that's your love for writing?
Honestly, I think I've always enjoyed reading books. It all started out with reading, and I was like, yeah, I could probably write something like this. And I think if you're going to be an author, you don't have to have the perfect grammar. I think that's a lot of things that people hold themselves up with. Maybe they didn't get the really in-depth education to become the perfect grammarian. But the thing is you don't have to do that nowadays. Now you just got to get your message out there, and you hire people that actually do the editing and create all the grammar and fix all the errors, so they can make it very polished nowadays. But what's really important to be a writer is the message. And everybody has a story. Everybody has a message. Don't be intimidated by just not being able to explain that message perfectly, because they're going to help you with that. That's what a content editor does. So there's professionals out there that can create that. I mean, there's best-selling books out there that are written by people who really weren't good at writing at all. Just they had an important message to share, and then the editors run with that story and they comb it and make it look nice. So.
Yeah, that's true indeed, because some folks you may have heard may have written these best-selling books, and they were really bad at just grammar in high school, if not in grade school. It's very true.
Yeah, so don't let those be an excuse to hold you back. If you feel like you got an important message that you want to get out there, and that was the basis of my book. I've been asked about the last 10 years for a lot of advice, and I've helped a lot of companies do startups. And I said, I just decided I wanted to be more public about this and just go for it, because I have seen good results, and I've experienced those results myself, and I enjoy being that person that people come to get advice from, because that's something you got to earn. You can't just put yourself out there as an authority without earning that respect, and I value that, and I have a lot of gratitude for that. So I was deciding, the best way for me to communicate my story is to put it in a book that anybody can access. And then also, we talked about Toastmasters. I joined about a year ago, June of last year, and that was because I knew that I had a story to tell, and I had to become a better person to be able to teach that story and become a better speaker, so I could do these podcasts and do these radio interviews and go on TV. And I prepared myself for the last year to become who I am at this moment.
Beautiful indeed. So basically going through that incubation phase, just being in that cocoon, preparing, maybe even some welding, metaphorically speaking, to get to where you currently are.
Yeah, it's a very important thing. If you're not investing in yourself on a daily basis, then you really have no excuse. I mean, nowadays, knowledge is so accessible. If you own a phone, it's connected to the internet, you can learn whatever you want nowadays, and there's so many books. I mean, there's literally millions of books out there that if you wanted to become an expert and learn something on any subject, you can find hundreds and hundreds of books on that subject. So, if you're not investing back into your own mind and learning something every single day, then you got no room to complain to me.
That is so true indeed, because a lot of folks want to just complain about things, but they don't want to take action. They just want someone to give them that attention.
Exactly. Yeah, complaining's free, takes no effort, and at the end of your complaining rant, you're still in the same situation you were. So it was really a waste of time.
That's right, a waste of time indeed. So I'm pretty sure there have been some trials in your life that you had to overcome to get to where you currently are with all the preparation and whatnot. So mind sharing a couple of those?
Yeah, I would say one of the lowest points in my life was probably the late 90s, like 99, 2001 type range. And it's because I was just out of college, so I didn't really have like a lot of experience, and we saw an industry downturn, and I found myself unemployed, and nobody was hiring. And then I didn't have enough experience to get interviews for the jobs that were existing out there, so it kind of put me in a bad place. I had all this student debt, student loan debt that I was trying to pay back, and I had a newborn son on his way, and a failed relationship with his mom, and and I said, I got all this money, I'm in debt, and like, what do I need to do? How do I get out of this? And the only answer I had was put my nose down and work. So I did. For a period of about 3 years, I was working 3 jobs, doing all these side hustles, doing whatever I could to put myself to get back to negative. And honestly, Dom, it took me 3 years to get back to zero. And you're not going to find that many people out there that have worked as hard as I did to get to zero.
Wow. That's the first time I heard that one. You had to work hard just to get to zero.
Yeah, a lot of people think they start at zero and they want to work their way up. But when you are a very dedicated person, you will get back to zero if you're that far down. And I mean, to give you an idea, I was probably negative $50,000 like in debt with no real career. So I was waiting tables and working and doing construction stuff and, like I said, washing cars and whatever I could, man. I was out there just hustling and using network and calling people and, posting on the internet that I could do these things and just taking these weird odd jobs. And it's just each little job was a brick in that wall, and it just kept building brick after brick. And then after a sudden you finally get to a point and you look back and you're like, wow, I accomplished all this stuff and I got to where I am. And that kind of mindset is what's driven me in my entire career. So that was, looking back 20 years ago. But the funny thing is the company that I started that did the best was in the middle of that. So I was like, even though I was like being bombarded by all this things I could have tapped out and like complained and said, I got nothing to do. I started my first company in the middle of all that, and that's the one that became millions.
It's kind of amazing how the times of adversity are really some of the best times of your life, because you created the business that did the most success while you were going through the most stress.
Exactly. I think until your back's against the wall or you paint yourself into that corner, you really learn a lot about yourself. If you're going to be a quitter, if you're going to go chase your dreams and like just struggle through it, because we all have to struggle through those things. And I think unless you've hit the bottom, you may not even understand like what motivates you. Yeah,
that sure kind of reminds me of the classic of the child who inherits a fortune and the parents did all their work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very rare case that you actually meet people that came from that background that were as hungry as the people that had to claw their way up.
Well, starting a multi-million-dollar business in the 90s, fighting through the trenches to get to zero, and then rocket ship, propelling yourself all the way up to the millions. What's next on the list for the mighty Tony?
If you've seen my brand 365 Driven out there on Instagram or Facebook, that's my newest company. I kicked off in May of last year, and that's going to be to help people. My ideal customer is the people that have a full-time job or professional, they're busy professional. They want to increase their income by creating a side business, and I've had a lot of experience doing that and helping other people do that. So I determined that I wanted to get out of the oil industry and focus on something I have a lot of passion for, and that's helping people become the best version of themselves, starting companies. And if you look at it from a business professional's perspective, it looks like there's a lot of things you got to do to create a business, and it's true. There is a lot of things to do. They just don't even know where to start. It just looks really overwhelming about all the things they got to get good at and the things and these building blocks to create that company. Well, that was the basis of the book that I created, Side Hustle Millionaire, in order to help people get the mindset. First of all, to me, the mindset is the most critical part of anything that you're going to do to chase success or become a business owner. So I spent a lot of time getting your mind right, getting rid of excuses, making yourself more accountable, kind of just putting yourself back in control of your own situation. And then we started getting into the actual business blocks of, evaluating your business ideas, looking for funding, creating your brand strategy, your marketing strategy, corporate structures. If you don't know what a DBA is, LLC, or an S Corp, I explain those in real simple terms to try to get you to understand, have a conversational comfortableness with that. And then it all goes into, basically my goal by someone having that book and reading it is that they understand and they're able to have a very comfortable conversation about everything and actually start their company. And at the end of each chapter, I also recommend several other books that go into more detail for each of those subjects that I recommend. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop for someone that's always talked about starting a business, but they don't ever start. So if you guys are listening and you're like that, or friends that are always talking about doing something, but they never do it, man, just tell them to get that book, and hopefully it's going to get the message and put some fire under them to get busy.
Amen to that. And the book cover is freaking gorgeous. It's got the orange, kind of like the flame, so it'll really light a fire under their butt. And if for some reason it doesn't work, just pull out a burlap sack with another copy of the book, put it in the burlap sack, put the person inside the burlap sack, make sure you throw them into a library. And have a mask on when you're doing it.
Yeah, you don't get to leave till you read something, man. Go learn something. And I've got basically my 20 years of business startup experience in that book, and it's only 112 pages, so you can actually read it in about 4 hours if you really put your mind to it. And once you get through it, you can always go back and reference chapters as you build your company. But there's a lot of problems that people start businesses, and that's one thing I want to talk about. We hear about the side hustle community out there. There's podcasts and there's other books on the subject, but from my perspective is that the side hustle community thinks too small. And you start reading these books and they're talking about, oh, you can make an extra $100 a month. You can make an extra $300 a month. And they're usually around like buying these little knickknacks for pennies on the dollar and trying to flip them for $1. But you got to sell a whole lot of those little knickknacks to earn a couple dollars, and that's just a waste of time. There's a lot better ways out there to make money to minimize your time, especially in the digital world. Why limit your customer base in your zip code or your city when you can have the entire world as your customer base, and the scalability is just huge. So you can earn a lot of money on side businesses as long as you create the right business model and really set some goals and work backwards. So those goals will be financial goals or exit plan goals or retirement goal. You got to have a financial goal in mind to work backwards from. And here's the problem with most side hustle community is they don't pick the right business model that's going to deliver them to their goal. So they may have like this widget that they want to hand build or do this thing or sell or carve something. I mean, they're always doing these things that consume a lot of time that don't make a lot of money when they could have just created a right business model with a skill set or a talent or something that they have, connecting people. There's all kinds of business, literally millions of business ideas out there, but people start with the wrong one because they're enamored by it and they're afraid to walk away from it because they've had this thing in their mind maybe for a couple of years. But the hard reality is if you don't have a business model that's going to deliver you to your goals, then you need to be strong enough to walk away from those and find one that will.
That is true indeed. That is true indeed. And I did like that piece in the beginning of the book where you mentioned how you think it's too small. And sometimes I admit I fall prey to this too. And it's like, wait a second, you got to actually think bigger so that way you'll actually get more out of what you're doing as opposed to thinking small and getting basically peanuts compared to what you can actually get out of it.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than when I consult these small businesses and they come to me and want help and they want to scale up or they want to build an exit strategy for their company that they can retire out of, and you look at their business model and what they've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years, it doesn't scale because it's usually based on them as an individual, and they can never sell that because they're tied to the company, right? So they can't obviously sell who they are. Or they're hand building something or just doing something that just really doesn't scale, I mean, you'd have to train 100 people to build exactly what you're doing, and that costs money to do that, right? So there's a lot of bottlenecks in their company idea, and I feel bad for them because it's like, man, you could have spent this last 4 or 5 years like actually pursuing something that was going to get you to your goals had you just thought about that in the beginning.
Yeah, that is true, and you can't get time back.
Exactly. Yeah, you basically end up spending twice the time if you go down the wrong path because you got to backtrack.
So for those with the full-time jobs and looking to start their side hustle and actually get the right mindset, any advice that you give to them after reading the book?
You just got to take action. A lot of people think they're brilliant because they got all these ideas. I mean, we've all had people we've worked with or friends that are always like, got these big ideas and they're always telling you they're going to do this and do that. And, if you have those people or you feel like you're one of them, just stop yourself or stop them and go, hey, man, ideas are worthless. Like ideas without action are worthless. Thousands of people die every single day with great ideas that never get shared to the world because they never took action. So don't pat yourself on the back because you have all these great ideas. What are you going to do with them? And inside that book, I teach you guys how to evaluate each of those ideas to see if they're going to get you to your goal. And I even teach you a method to compare those ideas against each other to find out which ones are going to give you the best odds of getting to your goal. So, ideas are cheap. It's like talk is cheap, but action's what's going to speak louder than anything, right?
Darn straight. And how about for the single parents out there who want to start that side hustle, but they got the kids to take care of, and they're just trying to fight through to create the extra income?
I hate to say it, but a lot of people use their kids as a convenient excuse about not doing things. There's been so many companies out there that are started and became highly successful from people in the exact same situation, so you can't use that as an excuse. And, I feel bad if you're blaming your kids as like your anchor that you can't do things. Because nowadays there's a lot of businesses you can do from home, and your kids don't need you 24/7. So whenever, Junior's taking a nap, you can actually fire up the computer and go get some work done for an hour or do something else. So here's the problem, is a lot of people are consumed by other things that are distracting them from what's really a priority. And when you start to think about the people that say, I don't have time to do something, what that really means is that's not my priority to do what you're talking about. And the reality here is whatever you are doing now, whatever you're doing today, that is your priority, whether you want to call it that or not. So if you're watching TV or socializing or doing things or surfing Facebook or doing all these things that you could be doing something more productive, that's your priority. And so when you start to reframe your mindset and go, man, is this really my priority? And if the answer is no, then what is my priority? If your priority is truly about bettering yourself, creating more income for your family, you got to do what it takes, and I get it. If family and your kids and all this is your priority, then that's what it is. Just, you're honest with yourself, but don't let that be an excuse, because there's a lot of excuses that we get tossed around there, like I don't have money, I don't have knowledge, I don't have time. These are surface level excuses that people use because they're politically acceptable, and they expect that when they toss out that surface level excuse, that whoever they're telling it to is just going to kind of not ask anymore because that's the excuse. The problem is there's a lot deeper excuses to that. And like I said, if you start digging into the mindset of things and understand, in the book chapter 2, I go into these mindsets and understand that's just an excuse and here's a reason why. And so if other people can do it, you just got to understand, hey, am I strong enough? Am I stronger or better than another person? Then I need to figure out how to do it myself.
Yeah, it's true indeed. Funny enough, one of my Toastmaster buddies is talking the same thing about how time management is really just energy management and knowing what your priority is for that day, and not just trying to create a bunch of to-do list items and call them all priorities.
Mhm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it is time management, and I would say if someone were to take a piece of paper and a pen, follow themselves around for a week and write down every single thing they're doing, all parts of the day, and just create this little schedule showing what they did, how much time they spent doing each of these things, you're going to be able to look back at that after a week and go, man, I could cut that out of my schedule. I could cut this out. I can get rid of this TV show. I can do this. I can, stay off the phone yakking with my friends for a couple hours a day. There's a whole lot of time you start to find that you just waste every single day. Even the most productive people, we find things that we still waste time on.
So true indeed, and you get to find out exactly how much time you waste and how bad you'll feel afterwards. Oh God, really? I really do have this much time.
Yeah,
man, I've been doing this crap.
Yeah, and there's time hacks. Let's say let's take for example driving to work. We can't obviously cut that out because we have to drive to work, right? But what can you do productive in that time? To me, it's buy an audio book or listen to these podcasts where you can actually learn something as you're doing something. You don't need your hands to listen. So get the Audible app on your phone. Start buying some audio books. Learn from some brilliant people while you're driving. So if you're wasting an hour a day driving back and forth to work, you could actually finish a book in 6 to 8 hours on an audio book. That's how about most of them are about 6 to 8 hours of listening. So you could literally learn an entire book every single week while you're driving to work.
That's true. Join Automobile University, as Zig Ziglar says. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and these podcasts out there, they're all free. You can learn so much from people that have all this experience by just listening while you drive. I listen to when I go to the gym. I listen to podcasts at the gym. Listen while I'm driving. I used to ride the bus downtown to Houston. I would listen while I was riding the bus. So basically, I've replaced music, and I love music. Don't get me wrong, but it's not my priority. My priority is learning, and I finish about a book a week now, and I read an actual page book, one a month. I put it by my nightstand in bed, so every night I go and I read about 30 minutes, and it makes me sleepy. It gives me something positive to think about while I'm going to sleep. So it's kind of, you can make these little miniature commitments, and you can learn a crazy amount of time. If you were to devote that self your 6 months of doing something like that, you're going to have so much more knowledge that you're just going to blow your mind. I love what you said about the miniature commitments. That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because usually commitment, people think of huge things, but if you make a small commitment, like at least reading a few pages a day to get to the point where you're reading a book a week or just listening to an audiobook while you drive, then you can actually build up and make a compound effect.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes a habit, and then that habit becomes a lifestyle change, and then you never go back. Once you create that lifestyle change and you've seen the positive results from it, you never go backwards, like to go back, and do what you used to do.
So, in speaking of information and knowledge and all sorts of great listening stuff, I've noticed you read a lot of books, but if you were to list your top two, excluding yours, of course, because it's a powerhouse, which books would they be?
Honestly, a book I came across a couple of years ago is called The Secret, and it's based on the Law of Attraction by Rhonda Byrne, Byrne, if you're looking her up. And I've always had this visualization and law of attraction kind of philosophy. Even as a kid, I was always, dreaming big and like visualizing like things I was going to have. It can be material items if that wants to motivate you. Whatever it takes, it's whatever you can use to draw some motivation to get you to do something, just use it. That's fuel for the tank, right? Everybody has different motivators. But the thing is to imagine yourself where you could be in 5 years or 1 year or 10 years and really, really visualize the things that you want to enjoy. And the law of attraction works out is that like you put out these good thoughts and magical things in the universe kind of align and they start to deliver you to the results that you visualize. And it's not like the hokey pokey weird stuff out there, because I'm a big skeptic and that kind of stuff, but a lot of the things I've visualized have actually happened to me. And here's my technical reason for that is because when you set goals, that's basically like you're visualizing things. Like if you want to visualize driving a Ferrari, like visualize it in detail, like it's red, it's this model, interior is tan, it smells like this, I'm enjoying this on this drive like down the coast. Really visualize these things. What that does is it inspires your mind, because now you gave your brain a goal, something in mind. And when your brain is so powerful, it's like a problem solver. All of our brains are basically problem solvers or puzzle solvers. We're always like trying to find a solution to a problem or a puzzle, right? But when you give your brain a goal like that that's really visual, it starts to work in the background. It starts to think about opportunities or networks or people that can lead you to that goal. And when it starts to find those opportunities, it's going to alert you like, hey, that's the opportunity. That's going to help us get us towards our goal. Like, what are you doing? Like, go do that. Go meet that person. Go take that course. Go read that book. So it's kind of like it keeps your mind goal set goal oriented, and that's going to keep your eyes open for all these opportunities that are going to get you to that goal. So that's kind of like how I see law of attraction. It's like you're putting these good thoughts out there. You're attracting more of that to you, but all the dreams in the world don't matter anything if you don't take any action, and that's the second component of it, right? So you got to have that goal. You got to visualize. You got to see those things. You got to put those positive thoughts out there. You got to verbalize it to your network. Hey, I want to be a public speaker. I want to be an author. I want to be a teacher. I want to be whatever. People that are listening and they genuinely see that you care about it, they're going to be the connectors. They're going to be like, hey, I know a guy that does that. Like, let me put you guys together to have a chat about that. See what I mean? So now you put it out in the world and you got a response. That's what law of attraction to me is. The other book that I like to talk about is Grant Cardone, The 10X Rule. And that one's really going to set your mind about thinking big. It's about multiplying whatever thought you have times 10. And it's a great philosophy there, because if you just have a goal, and let's say you chase that goal and you fail, then you didn't really get to that goal. So it's like just a 1X goal. But if you set your goals 10X, no matter how crazy that sounds, no matter how big that sounds, and you actually put in the effort that's going to require to reach that 10X goal, which means basically doing 10 times more of what you thought to get to the 1X goal. If you fail, let's say you're going after that 10X and you fail and you get to like 4X, you're 4 times higher than your original goal. See what I mean? So that's a great mindset to think about. Like, just do the extra work. It's all a numbers game. The more effort you put in, the more success opportunity that you have.
Great book, especially 10X Rule. That one is really legendary. Grant Cardone, especially on audio. I love Grant on audio. He is the man.
Dude, he is awesome. But you got to get that book on audio, and then if you like it enough, buy the hardcover. But audio is the way to go for that one.
Yeah, because dude just goes in and then he goes off script without announcing it.
Yeah.
Which is freaking awesome.
Yeah. It's like having a conversation with a guy, self-made multi-millionaire. I think he's like 350 million or something, or they say, and that it's like having a conversation with the guy listening to the book, and you could never even afford an hour of that guy's time, which is incredible.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's like, what, $100,000 an hour at one point?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's why we create books that you can get into the mind of all these people that you could never even approach.
So true indeed. So with all of your amassed knowledge and expertise and stories and that you've gained over the years, if you were to go back in time and you were 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2018, what advice would you give to yourself?
I think one of the main themes I like to help with my clients is the main thing that I see that hold people back is a fear of rejection. They're worried about what other people say. They're worried about what other people are going to think about them, and that keeps them from pursuing their dreams. And that to me is the saddest part of anything that I help people with. No matter how successful, even successful people still have that level of self-doubt and their unwillingness to put themselves out there because they're worried about what people are going to say about them. But here's something to think about. When you reach hopefully some old age in life and you're laying on your deathbed and you know your life's going to pass, are all those critics and naysayers really going to matter to you at that moment? Are they going to be the ones that are, you're worried about? No, you're going to look back across your life and you're going to go, hey, did I accomplish everything I tried to do, or do I have a lot of regrets? And if you're going to let these people who don't even matter, who don't even support you, who never will support you, you could cure cancer with some of these people and they're still going to have something negative to say about you. If you're going to let those kind of people hold you back in life, then that's really sad. You just got to get past that. You got to understand that you're never going to make everybody happy. Even if you were the best person in the world and you tried to make everybody happy, you will never make everybody happy. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can break free from these people that hold you back, find better people that support your dreams and what you're going to do, and just kind of surround yourself with the supportive people and get away from the people that are negative or telling you that you can't do something or having doubts or putting these negative things in your head. You just got to do what you got to do, man. And that's what I would have told myself at 25, because that's something I think that's very valuable, and it will escalate and really increase your success, your growth and your success if you're going to be willingness to do things that matter to you, putting yourself out there, being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is actually a show of bravery and courage. A lot of people don't understand that as well, because the people that are being critics, they would never be able to do that. And if those people aren't willing to step in that same arena and do what you do, then you shouldn't even take their advice, because they're just being cowards and shooting from the sideline. So that, to me, is like the number one thing, is get past what other people think or say about you and just do what you need to do.
Amen to that, brother. Amen. Man. The critics, they don't matter, especially on the deathbed. It's like, critics, man, forget critics, man. It's like, how was my life?
Yeah. You find that the critics really don't have – critics generally are just unhappy, miserable people. And if they were successful and happy themselves, they'd want everybody else around them to be successful and happy as well, because they're coming from a place. And I know some highly successful financial people who are miserable, who always try to bring other people down. And it just shows you a lot about how that person is, how their mind is. And it's really sad to see that. So I feel a lot of empathy for people who are critics and naysayers, because they're just not happy people. And I hope they find their happiness so they don't become like that. But once you understand their psychology of how they really are, you just kind of have to understand, like, hey, I'm not going to argue back with these people. I'm just going to distance myself from them.
Amen to that. So for those who want to keep in contact with you and keep up with all that you're doing at 365 Driven, along with the other things that you're doing, how can we keep in touch with you?
You can visit my website, 365driven.com. If you want to know more about my book, you can go look that up on Amazon, Side Hustle Millionaire, or you can look it up on sidehustlebook.net. You can find me on social media. I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram. My Instagram page is instagram.com/365driven, and then facebook.com/365driven. So you can see I'm very consistent across my branding strategy, and that kind of goes into some detail in the book as well.
So there you have it, folks. Go ahead, follow all of his pages, buy the book, The Side Hustle Millionaire, and then hustle your way on the side like a side of fries till you become the big entree.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to have a chat with you. It was a good time.
Woohoo!
Thanks a bunch for your listening ears on the Going North podcast. I hope you really, really enjoyed that episode. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family, especially those who love podcasts and love listening to some inspiration and motivation. And if you'd like to connect with me directly, feel free to shoot me an email at dombrightmon@gmail.com.